When your rookie quarterback walks out of the team facility mid-meeting, it isn't just a heated moment. It's an earthquake that shakes the foundation of an entire franchise. That's exactly what happened in Cleveland, where Shedeur Sanders didn't just leave practice early, he left the Browns staring down a crisis that could define their season, maybe even their future. Think about this for a second. The player the organization invested in as their supposed franchise cornerstone, the one ownership handpicked to lead them into a new era, simply stood up, said, "I'm done with this," and walked out while teammates sat frozen in disbelief. No explanation, no warning, just gone. And while the headlines will tell you this was about a clash between Sanders and head coach Kevin Stefanski, the truth runs deeper. This isn't just a disagreement over play calls or coaching style. What unfolded was the boiling point of weeks of hidden tension, bruised egos, and power struggles no one on the outside was supposed to see. Because make no mistake, when a quarterback abandons the building and the head coach erupts behind closed doors, you're not looking at normal rookie frustrations. You're witnessing something bigger, an organizational implosion happening in real time. But how did it come to this? And what does it mean for Sanders, for Stefanski, and for the Browns' already fragile future? It all unraveled during what was supposed to be a routine offensive installation. Coaches were walking players through third down packages, the kind of session that usually feels boring and mechanical. But this time, something snapped. Multiple witnesses say head coach Kevin Stefanski stopped the drill and openly questioned Shedeur Sanders' execution against the scout defense. At first, it was just sharp criticism, nothing unusual in the high-stakes world of NFL meetings. But then the exchange escalated. Voices rose, the room grew tense, and suddenly the Browns' prized rookie did something no one expected. He stood up, yanked off his playbook wristband, and said the words that stunned everyone in earshot. "I'm done with this." Then, without hesitation, he walked out. No glance back, no attempted explanation, just a cold exit that left the room in stunned silence. What happened next only deepened the shock. Stefanski immediately followed him into the hallway, shouting for Sanders to come back. Veteran assistants tried stepping in, hoping to de-escalate the situation, but Sanders never slowed down. He ignored every command, every plea, every desperate attempt to stop him. He just kept walking. Through the hallway, past stunned teammates, straight out to the parking lot, and into his car. Within minutes, the Browns' carefully constructed season plan disintegrated. The supposed future of the franchise had just walked out the door in front of the entire building. But if you think that was the end of it, you'd be wrong. Because what happened behind closed doors after Sanders left made the walkout look almost tame. The moment Sanders' car pulled out of the lot, the atmosphere inside the Browns facility turned nuclear. Publicly, Stefanski would later stand at the podium, jaw tight, voice measured, insisting the team would move forward. But according to those who were there, the real Stefanski erupted in a way no one on his staff had ever seen.
Behind closed doors, he wasn't the calm strategist Cleveland fans recognize on Sundays. He was livid, red-faced, trembling, unleashing a storm of expletives that rattled assistants and left veteran coaches stunned. One staff member described it as, "In 20 years in football, and I've never seen him like that." What the world saw during the press conference was the sanitized version. The carefully worded, "We've done everything to support him," and "The team always comes first." But stripped of that polished exterior, his words carried a darker meaning. Sanders had crossed a line that Stefanski considered unforgivable. And the cracks showed even in public. When reporters pressed about Sanders' grievances, Stefanski's composure faltered. His voice rose, his knuckles gripped the podium tighter, and for a split second, the mask slipped. "We're talking about professional football, not therapy sessions," he snapped. It wasn't just frustration, it was betrayal. That tiny fracture in his public image was nothing compared to the volcanic rage boiling inside team walls. Coaches whispered that the relationship between Stefanski and Sanders wasn't just damaged, it was shattered beyond repair. But here's the thing. This confrontation didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't about one meeting gone wrong or a single argument over play calls. This explosion was weeks in the making, fueled by mounting tension that had been quietly eating at the Browns since training camp. What happened that morning wasn't some random outburst. It was the breaking point of weeks of friction that had been building in silence. From the outside, fans saw Sanders completing passes, putting up touchdowns, and looking every bit like the future of the franchise. But inside the facility, he felt something very different. Like no matter what he did, it was never enough. Despite a strong stat line in the Browns' loss to the Rams, 70% completions, 3 touchdowns, coaches zeroed in on every mistake. Every missed read, every protection call he adjusted, every audible he made under pressure was dissected and criticized in film sessions. One player put it bluntly. It felt like Coach blamed Shedeur for everything while everyone else got a pass. That constant scrutiny began to eat away at him. And then came the practice reps. Ownership wanted Sanders groomed as the face of the franchise, but Stefanski kept splitting first-team snaps with journeyman quarterbacks. Some days, Sanders actually took fewer reps than the backups. To a rookie fighting to prove himself, it felt less like coaching and more like sabotage. The message was clear. You're not special, you're not the future, you're just another guy until I say otherwise. And Sanders took it personally. The tipping point came after the Rams game when Stefanski's post-game comments were widely interpreted as a shot at his rookie. Young quarterbacks must learn winning requires more than individual statistics. Leadership means taking responsibility, executing the plan, not freelancing. He didn't say Sanders' name, but nobody had to guess who he meant. According to teammates, Sanders replayed that clip over and over, growing more convinced he was being scapegoated for problems much bigger than him. The criticism wasn't about football anymore. It felt targeted. It felt personal. So by the time Stefanski publicly challenged him again that morning in stall, the frustration had already reached boiling point. The explosion wasn't sudden, it was inevitable.
But what made this so combustible wasn't just criticism or missed reps. It was something much deeper, a fundamental clash of philosophies between coach and quarterback that made coexistence nearly impossible. At its core, this wasn't just about missed throws or harsh criticism. It was about two worlds colliding, two completely different approaches to football, leadership, and respect. On one side stood Kevin Stefanski, a coach cut from the old-school mold. In his system, authority flows top-down. Respect is earned, not granted. Players are expected to fall in line, accept criticism without question, and trust that discipline and structure will eventually lead to success. That's the foundation Stefanski has built his entire career on, and it's the principle he wasn't willing to compromise. On the other side was Shedeur Sanders, representing a new generation of athletes, talented, confident, brand-aware, and unwilling to accept outdated hierarchies just because that's the way it's always been done. He believes in proving himself on the field, but he also expects recognition, input, and the kind of empowerment today's stars feel entitled to. To Sanders, respect isn't something you wait years to receive, it's something you demand when you deliver. Neither perspective is necessarily wrong, but when those two philosophies clash in the same building, the result is combustible. And in Cleveland, it finally detonated. Stefanski viewed Sanders' walkout as the ultimate act of insubordination, a rookie refusing to accept accountability. Sanders viewed Stefanski's handling of him as deliberate disrespect, an attempt to break him down rather than build him up. Each man saw the other not as an obstacle, but as a partner. And once both sides dug in, there was no middle ground left to stand on. But the true fallout wasn't just between coach and quarterback. The moment Sanders walked out, the entire locker room and organization were pulled straight into the fire. And that's when the situation spiraled into something even bigger, an all-out crisis that no one could contain. The second Sanders walked out, the Browns' locker room split like glass under pressure. Some players immediately backed their quarterback, especially the receivers who had built chemistry with him and believed he gave them the best chance to shine. They saw a rookie being torn down instead of lifted up, and they weren't afraid to let the coaching staff know it. One prominent pass catcher even confronted Stefanski directly, questioning whether his handling of the situation had pushed Sanders out the door. Others stayed quiet, but not because they didn't care. The offensive line, usually Stefanski loyalists, suddenly looked torn. Do they side with the coach who preaches discipline or the quarterback they're supposed to protect every Sunday? Defensive players tried to stay neutral, but privately admitted they were worried about leadership breaking apart. As one veteran put it, the locker room feels broken. Half the guys are with the coach, half think he's lost the plot. And if the scene inside the building was chaotic, what happened online was absolute mayhem. Within minutes, Shedeur Sanders was trending nationwide. Clips of Stefanski's press conference racked up millions of views, each frame dissected by fans and media alike. Former players jumped in, analysts picked sides, and social media turned the Browns' crisis into a public spectacle.
Shannon Sharpe blasted the organization, tweeting that Stefanski had just fumbled away Cleveland's future. Skip Bayless fired back, praising the coach for refusing to bow to rookie entitlement. The debate only fueled the fire, making the Browns the #1 story in sports for all the wrong reasons. Ownership wasn't spared from the storm either. Reports say Jimmy Haslam, the very owner who had championed Sanders as the future of the franchise, went ballistic when he learned his prized rookie had stormed out. He allegedly called Stefanski on the spot, demanding answers, screaming through the phone in front of stunned staffers. In that moment, the Browns' crisis stopped being just a coach versus player issue. It became a three-way war: quarterback versus coach, coach versus owner, owner versus chaos itself. And the stakes weren't just emotional. With a division rival looming in days, the Browns were unraveling in real time, and the power struggle was only getting uglier. What made this mess even more dangerous was that it wasn't just emotional. It was contractual, political, and career-defining. Shedeur Sanders is still under a rookie deal. He can't just walk away without consequences. The Browns could fine him, suspend him, even void parts of his contract. On paper, the team holds the leverage. But in reality, playing hardball with the quarterback ownership personally handpicked could nuke the relationship forever and create a PR disaster the franchise might never recover from. And that's exactly why the power dynamic shifted so violently. Jimmy Haslam wasn't demanding patience or reconciliation. He wanted Sanders back on the field immediately. To him, the quarterback wasn't just a rookie. He was the investment, the face of the franchise, the centerpiece of the team's marketing push. Losing him wasn't an option. Stefanski, on the other hand, wasn't backing down. Sources say his response was blunt. Sanders had to return on the coach's terms. That meant apologizing to teammates, accepting whatever role the staff decided, and submitting to the hierarchy Stefanski believed in. To him, anything less would destroy his authority not only in Cleveland, but across the league. Sanders' camp didn't see it that way. His representatives reportedly fired back with demands of their own: guaranteed starter status, more influence in play calling, and a public apology from Stefanski himself. In their eyes, Sanders had been disrespected too many times to just return quietly. Two sides, two ultimatums, zero room for compromise. And in the middle of it all sat the Browns' front office, forced to juggle an enraged owner, a defiant coach, and a rookie quarterback who was ready to blow up the entire organization if he didn't feel valued. General Manager Andrew Berry spent hours on damage control, calling agents, calming ownership, and scrambling to keep the season from collapsing before September even ended. But by now, this wasn't just about salvaging a season. Careers were on the line. Stefanski knew that bending would cost him his credibility. Sanders knew that backing down would stain his reputation forever. Haslam knew that whichever way it went, he was risking either his coach or his quarterback. And that's when the story stopped being about Cleveland alone, because the rest of the NFL was watching closely, seeing something much bigger take shape. By this point, the drama wasn't confined to Cleveland anymore. It had spilled across the entire NFL. League executives, scouts, and players around the country were glued to their phones, watching the Browns unravel like a live documentary on dysfunction. Privately, rival front offices were stunned. One NFC general manager called it organizational malpractice, shaking his head at how quickly a supposed franchise quarterback had gone from cornerstone to walking out the door. An AFC executive put it even harsher. Cleveland is showing the rest of us exactly how not to run a team. It's almost impressive how badly they've mismanaged this. But while executives shook their heads, players around the league were paying attention for a different reason. If Shedeur Sanders managed to hold his ground and force change as a rookie, it would set a precedent no one had seen before. Proof that even the youngest, most unproven players could leverage power over established coaches. For some veterans, that idea was terrifying. For others, it was inspiring. Texts started flying. One young quarterback reportedly messaged Sanders, "Stand your ground, don't let them break you." Another veteran sent support to Stefanski instead. "Don't give in. If you do, every player in this league will think they can run the show." It wasn't just Cleveland's crisis anymore, it had turned into a philosophical battle across the entire NFL. Meanwhile, the media circus kept spinning. ESPN and Fox had round-the-clock coverage parked in Cleveland. Every rumor became breaking news. Every whisper of an update got pushed as a headline. Analysts debated not just who was right, but what the fallout would mean for the league's balance of power. Was this the beginning of a new era of player empowerment, or a warning sign of chaos to come? And hanging over it all was a grim truth. No matter how this ended, both Sanders and Stefanski were now tied to this saga forever. If Sanders came out on top, he'd be celebrated by some as principled and fearless, but branded by others as entitled and uncoachable. If Stefanski stood his ground, he'd be praised as disciplined and uncompromising, or condemned as stubborn and outdated. The entire league was watching, not just for the drama, but for what it represented. Cleveland had accidentally turned itself into the test case for the NFL's future. But for the Browns, this wasn't about philosophy, perception, or league-wide debates. It was about survival. And the truth was unavoidable. Someone in Cleveland was going to lose everything before this fight was over. So where does this all end? That's the question haunting every corner of Cleveland right now. Will Shedeur Sanders swallow his pride and return under Stefanski's terms? Will the head coach be forced out by an enraged ownership desperate to protect their investment? Or will the rookie quarterback, just months into his career, be traded away in one of the most shocking moves in recent NFL history? Every path forward carries damage. Even if Sanders returns, the trust between him and his coach is shattered. If Stefanski survives, his credibility with players may be gone forever. And if ownership chooses sides, it risks splitting the locker room permanently. There is no clean resolution, only scars that will define the Browns long after this season ends. And that's the real tragedy. Cleveland isn't just facing a quarterback controversy, they're staring at something far worse. An organizational collapse playing out in real time. A coach clinging to authority, a rookie demanding respect, an owner desperate to save face. Together, they've created a perfect storm that threatens to sink the entire franchise. Because in the NFL, talent alone isn't enough. Championships aren't built on highlight reels or draft picks. They're built on unity, trust, and shared commitment. And right now, the Browns have none of that. So here's the harsh truth. Cleveland's 2024 season may already be over long before the calendar flips to October. Someone is going to lose their job. Maybe Sanders, maybe Stefanski, maybe both. But one way or another, this story doesn't end quietly.
The only question left is who falls first. Because when a rookie quarterback can walk out on his team and a head coach can erupt in rage for the world to see, recovery isn't just difficult, it's almost impossible.